Hi guys, welcome back to the Adaptive Zone podcast. My name is Matthew Boyd. I'm a physiotherapist and running coach. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're so inclined, share it with a friend. Today we have a very special guest, Jessica. One of our clients is joining us. She's my favorite client by far. So thanks for joining us, Jessica.
You're welcome.
So could you tell us a little bit about you and your background in running?
Yeah, I started running 2020, so about 4 years ago. Just entered a few like 5K, 10K races, and I did pretty well. I live in southeastern Arizona, so I do a lot of desert running, mountains and stuff, and wanted to learn more about running and people that go distances. And so I thought, well, I wonder if that's something I can do, become an ultra runner. And so I started with a friend and my sister running further distances. And it was a lot of fun and I did well. I was placing and I kept moving up. But at some point, I had a lot of knee pain going on, and that was kind of preventing me from moving forward.
So what got you hooked initially? Like what was it about the running that you sort of really dove into it?
Um, I think just that it was something new, and it was a challenge to myself, and I'm a driven person, and so it was like, oh, I can do a mile. How fast can I do a mile? Oh, I can do two. I can do more. And trail running specifically was such a draw because I was going places I couldn't see, just by hiking, and the distance was really appealing, and I was like, I wonder how far can I keep pushing this.
Okay. So you were doing that, and what kind of mileage or what kind of distance runs were you doing at that point? Yeah.
So I have a favorite run that I do up and over the Cochise Stronghold where I live. It's about 10 miles. And it's just beautiful, beautiful country. And I would do that every weekend. But like during the week, I do 3 to 5 mile runs, 4 to 5 times.
Mm. And then you started doing races as well at that point?
Yes, yes, here locally, different trail runs, some half marathons up in Tucson, which is a city where I live, and lots of elevation, water crossings. It was a lot of fun. The technicality of the trails is always drawing to me as well.
Yeah. Cool. And were you doing like ultra trail races at that point? Like what kind of distance races had you got to?
So by about late 2021, I had stepped up to actually not being scared and deciding to enter my first ultra, which was a 55-kilometer race, just on the Arizona Trail outside of Tucson. And it was one of those things where you sign up for this race and you're like, "Oh, I don't think I can do it." And then the day of came, and I did very well. I was about mid-pack on that one. I wasn't out there to race, or I was just out there to finish and have a good time. And the course is pretty flat. It's not like up in the mountains. It's still technical, and yeah, that one taught me a lot. I wasn't too prepared, like fueling, and probably could have done better on that. I think I lost a toenail, and but yeah, I was pretty sore after that run, knees just everywhere. I was like, wow, that was pretty intense.
But it didn't put you off?
I couldn't really walk that well for about 5 days, but the exhilaration of coming down, because at the very last is downhill to the finish line, and you hear them cheering. And up to that point, I was like, I am never running another ultra ever again. And then, of course, the minute you cross the finish line, I did it. I did that 55 kilometers. And I was like, okay, where's the next race? When can I sign up? But yeah, it was super painful.
Okay. And so what happened after that? Did you go on and do more races, or is that when the knees started troubling you? Like what happened next?
So my knees were swollen after that race for a couple of days, which is part of the reason I couldn't really walk that well. And I was like, is this normal? I thought at first that was normal, because everyone talked about ultra running. Yeah, you're in pain afterwards, and you just have to give your body time to recover. And so I was like, okay. And the swelling went down and the knee pain was there. But in that following March, 'cause that race was in December, I did a 25 miler. And the knee pain came back during the run. Not quite as bad because it wasn't as far of a race, but I was like, this is maybe not so normal, but understandable given, the distance and the terrain. So I just kind of kept that in the back of my mind, would stop running until my knee was feeling okay. It wasn't ever great. And then just kind of train when I could around that knee pain and then look forward to the next time I could sign up for an ultra.
Mm. Okay. And then, so how did that play out over the next little while? Did the knee pain sort of stay the same? Did it get better? Were you able to do more races?
It got a little better over the summer because I didn't run as hard or as much. And then, of course, in Arizona, it's a little too hot to run in the summer, so most of the races pick back up in the fall. And it was January of 2023. I entered another ultra marathon, and it wasn't quite as far as the 55K. I think it was like 30, it was like 50 something kilometers. And I did place first overall female in that. But the next day, my knees, again, they were wrecked. And so I'm like talking to other people by now, other ultra runners, and they're like, oh, yeah, I go out for a recovery run the next day. And I'm like, my jaw hit the ground. I was like, no way, I can't even walk because of the pain. So I knew at that point, this isn't sustainable for sure.
Okay. So what did you decide to do after that?
So I started like Googling things like crazy, which is really frustrating and confusing because there's so much out there. And then all these algorithms like on Instagram start showing you, oh, knee pain, here's what you should do, here's what you should eat, here's how you should exercise, do this, don't do that. And I was like, man, I'm never gonna find my way out of this. And in the meantime, my knees, even shorter runs, it was not good.
Mm.
So yeah, it was just not a good place. And I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I should just pull back and not run for, maybe 6 to 8 months. Maybe I have ruined my knees on these long runs. Everyone's like, oh, you're a runner, you're crazy. Your knees are going to be wrecked by the time you're, 42 or whatever.
Mm. How did you feel
So
about that when you were hearing things like that and thinking about taking a break? Like, where was your head at that point?
it was kind of sad because my long-term goal had been to bump up to the 50-mile distance and eventually get to where I could run a 100-mile race at some point. And I was like, well, might have to give that up and just maybe take up bicycling or something.
Mm.
Even though I'm not overly fond of being on wheels, I really like my own 2 feet.
Okay. So, and had you started reducing your mileage to kind of accommodate the knees by then?
Yeah, so I would go out and run a mile and just kind of feel eh. And so I told myself I'll just run a mile a day. And then the next week I'll try for two. But the knees were just not really having it. And so I was just not happy with not being able to go out, especially up in the mountains and trail run,
Mm.
just in those beautiful places. Yeah, I was staying on the flat. Any elevation change really aggravated the knees quite a bit. So I
Mm.
was trying to stay on the flat roads as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay. And so then what happened next?
So at that point, I was really searching just for anybody that knew something about knee pain and someone that had maybe had knee pain and was able to, get rid of it. Because as far as I could tell, my knees weren't destroyed. I hadn't ripped out all the cartilage, or I don't know, it wasn't bone on bone. Um, and so I was looking on Strava and talking to different ones, knee pain, what do you do? You're an ultra runner, and same on Facebook. And I think that's when I, came across your Fix My Running. I was like, I wonder, it's we'll see. So I think that's about when I had reached out to you, because I was really at that low point. I mean, really, for me, a mile a day, I was like, oh.
And how it sounds like you were feeling a little skeptical at that point and jaded maybe from lots of people promising to fix it with that you'd been shown by the algorithms, and it sounds like you weren't super keen to talk to me either.
Right, yeah, because you see stuff over and over, and you're like, okay, so how could it be that easy? Well, I've tried, doing squats. Like one day I just decided I was going to do a bunch of squats for knee strength, and then I ended up hurting worse the next day. And I was trying little things on my own. I'm like, well, that didn't work, and I couldn't ever get the right fit. It's like a recipe.
Mm.
You flour and egg and butter and sugar, but if you don't get the right ratios, the right time, you're going to end up a mess. And that's kind of how I felt. Trying to bake a cake without a recipe, and it was a disaster.
Yeah, it's that's a really good metaphor because it is like those basic ingredients. Like, there's nothing magical to fixing knee pain, but it's like the proportions and how you like how long you put it in the oven for, and like the temperature and all that kind of thing. And it's getting it all just right so it works together. That's a good one. So um so what was it about whatever it was that you saw of mine that made you think, well, okay, this is worth a try. I'll have a chat with this Matthew guy and see what this is about. Like what was it that made you think, okay, it's worth an inquiry?
I think the biggest thing was that um, scrolling through one of your pages, I had noticed there was a study that you had posted saying that running is actually good for your knees, and people who run have healthier knees later in life than people
That's
who don't.
right. Stay tuned.
Taking care of their yeah, but they're taking care of their body, right? And no one else really had said that. And I was like, well, if there's all these people that are running into their 60s and 70s with no knee pain, and this guy believes it, and he's going to help these people. I'm like, he's already, this is different than anything I've been told. Conventionally they're like, oh, don't run, you'll hurt your knees. So then I looked more into like some of the testimonials, and like, wow, it's these, what he's saying is makes sense. It just made a lot of sense with, you can't stop running to fix knee pain, because you start running, it'll come back.
Mm.
And that's exactly what I experienced. And so I'm like, well, he knows already where I'm coming from. And these other runners that were in the testimonial, I think you gave like 3 examples. They also, showed, yeah, they didn't have to stop running to heal their knees, to fix the knee pain, just reduced a little, but then with supportive exercises and dynamic stretches and everything else. So I was like, this is already very intriguing to me, and I should reach out just to see more of what this program has to offer.
Mm. And I know it was a while back. Do you remember much about that first phone call with me and like what we talked about? What made you decide that you were going to sort of trust us to try and help you?
I do remember I was really pushy about not wanting to stop running. Okay. And I was like, well, I've already entered this race and I really have to train for it. And you're like, well, let's focus on the goal here. What is the goal? And you really made me hone in on the goal, which was longevity for my knees. So I could keep running strong and pain free to get out to that eventual 100-miler, instead of letting me focus on, oh, this race that's in 6 weeks or however far out it was at the time. You're like, okay, if it doesn't happen, what is the goal? And you held me to that. And that I was like, oh, this coach, he's going to be good.
Good. Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah, because not everybody responds the same way to that. Do you know what I mean? I always say that there's a guy called strength coach called Dan John who says, the goal is to keep the goal the goal. And I always remembered that. I think that is really important, which is why I spent such a long time when we were talking. Like, what is the goal? Like, what is the big goal? Like, let's start with that, and then we can talk about other stuff and whether it fits in or not. And so it's good to hear the experience on the other side of it, because, like I said, not on everyone responds that way. They're like, like, what? So I might not be able to do this X, Y, or Z, and it's like, well, that is not going to help you towards your long-term goal. So you can, but you might not get there. And it takes a certain maturity, I think, to say, okay, well, I'm going to pick one thing and I'm going to focus on that. And that's what you decided to do. So do you remember much about the first few weeks in the training? Because it can be a bit of a shell shock sometimes in terms of like what you're expecting versus what you end up doing. Do you remember that time period much and what your experience was like, kind of in your shoes for that?
I do. So at first I thought, well, this is going to be easy. And one one thing that had been not present in my cross training, and I really wasn't very good at cross training before starting the program, was the weights. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to lift weights. I really don't. And so the first couple of weeks, I kind of, put off looking into how to get a weight set, and I was using just shampoo bottles to do some arm curls and stuff. But I was like, okay, you're gonna have to bite the bullet. And so I did, but I'm super glad that I went ahead and did that. And the runs I was kind of shocked at. I'm like, well, these are kind of short, but they were very effective hill sprints, tempo runs. They weren't much over a half hour, but they were forcing me to be quality, and also really pay attention. When is the pain happening? And I think that was probably the biggest eye opener. Was I had to record not only when the pain started, but the intensity. Was it getting worse? Was it getting better during the run? Really focusing in on that, what and where the pain was. Was it also other parts of my body? So just it brought so much. Those first couple of weeks brought so much more awareness to my body, especially around the pain.
Yeah, it's about like holding a mirror up for you so you can see, which is hard on your own, right? Like you can't see the wood for the trees a lot of the time. But like you said, when you're forced to say, oh, this is exactly how it behaved, it makes your decision making that much easier because you have that clarity about how it's behaving. So that was the first month or so, and then we kept going. Like, can you sort of walk us through how the next couple of months played out for you?
So I believe I started training pretty much right after I had done a 25-mile run. So I came in a little sore, got through those first couple of weeks, got my weight set, really started putting in some quality workouts, sticking to the program, even though sometimes I wanted to not run as far or run further. It's like, no, I need to follow this, to the T. And probably 6 weeks in, or maybe a little further, I'm not sure, but maybe around the halfway mark, I had entered a half marathon up in Tucson, and it was pretty technical. They had a lot of stairs, and I talked to the team, and they were like, "Yeah, you can do that, but we'll just really monitor, knee pain and what's happening." And so I did that marathon. I finished second overall female, but more than that, my legs felt so strong. I can honestly say I've never run on legs that felt that strong before. And I've crossed that finish line. I was like, oh, there's no knee pain. Oh, that's never happened before. And I'd run this course before, and not the 13 miles. It was a 10-mile course at the time. They went ahead and made it a half marathon. And I remember before running that course, like, oh man, my knees were just aching. And so when I crossed that finish line, I was like, wow, this has made a huge difference. And it hasn't even been the full 12 weeks. So then there was even more motivation to like, okay, I'm just going to stay really regimented, follow this program through, because I mean, 6 weeks, yeah, that's a long time, but not really in the broad scheme of things. And to have made that progress and been pain free after that run was just phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, you'd done the work, like even the stuff that you didn't want to do. And that's not that easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. So what would you attribute that to? Like, what do you think was the thing that moved the needle for you in those initial kind of 6 weeks that that really made the difference?
As far as like an exercise or
In terms of
just
like what was different about what you were doing in those weeks versus what you had been doing the previous like year or whatever it was.
Mhm. So the weight training definitely was huge. A lot of the single leg movements, calf raises, split squats, and just keeping in mind that when we run, the force placed on that joint needs to be supported by the muscles that surround that joint. And so I also, when I would do the workouts, I was focusing on the muscles as well, and just really, paying attention. Am I using these muscles the way they need to be used, or am I letting them slack? And so I think that the the cross training for sure was a huge part of that, because that was the one thing I hadn't been doing.
Mm.
Um, and I guess some of the tempo runs, especially like I would just go out and run. Like, I could run a little faster. I'd run a little faster. I'd get a little tired, slow down. There wasn't a lot of focus to what I was doing before. And following the program, it brought that focus back. Like, okay, we're going to do this. And we have a specific reason why we do this, and a specific reason why we do it this way. Don't just like, oh, it's a 30-minute run, 34-minute tempo or whatever. So I go out and run for 34 minutes. No, warm up, do the cool down. That was really important.
Mm.
I just go out and run. I wouldn't focus on a warm up. So that probably wasn't doing my bodies any favors either.
Cool. And okay, so you're about halfway through like your first period with us, and so what happened next? Where did it go from there?
So I had signed up for a 38-mile run in Flagstaff, Arizona, and that was kind of towards the end of the 12 weeks. And so there was this, like, I should be training harder for this. I did end up missing a few of my long runs, just due to my own fault, just time scheduling or time management. Um, but I did really keep up with the weights, because that was something I could fit in. You know, it was 45 minutes, and so just following that through, just really keeping that weight training, making as many of the weekly runs as I could, and extending those longer runs. It's like, that's easier because there's no pain.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just really focusing in on sticking to the program as much as possible, especially the cross training.
Mm. And then, so you felt like you were ready to go in and do the race, or were you feeling kind of nervous about that?
So the two weeks before the 38 miler, I had so much doubt come in. I'm like, why did I even sign up for this? I didn't think I had trained distance wise enough. I had time on my feet, but there was just, a lot of other little things that were coming in. Like, am I really ready? What if I can't climb that mountain? Or, what if the knee pain comes back? And all these little things just kept going through my mind about 2 weeks out. And I thought, no, I'm just going to do it. Just put one foot in front of the other and know that, you've been set up for success, and just stick with it.
So how did it go?
So the race went really well. It was the furthest I've ever run, and it seemed easy. There's some times where you just run, and I was like, oh, I must be at mile 3. And I looked at my watch, and it showed us at mile 7. I was like, wow, I don't know. It felt good to run. Like, my legs were strong. I made it to mile 10. I felt fresh. I was like, well, that was the easiest 10 miles I've ever run. But given a longer race that I still had, 28 miles left, I kept telling myself, don't push too hard, take it easy. And it just felt good to run. I'd passed a few people along the way. I didn't really know if I was, um, where I was. I started kind of towards the front, but I didn't know how many people were, up in front of me. And hit a little bit of a rough patch at mile 31. I think there was kind of maybe a wall there. I did try to watch all the little educational videos about fueling, and but I think this one was more mental because I was about that distance I'd never run past before, that 31, 32 mile mark. And I fell and that hurt. But I got back up and I kept moving. And when I crossed the finish line, they said, "Congratulations, you're the first female." And I couldn't believe it. I just ran 38 miles with 200 other runners, and I was the fastest girl out there.
Wow.
And I finished 10th overall, and it was unbelievable. And when I when I crossed that finish line after getting over the shock of everything, I could still walk. My knees weren't swollen. My knees did not hurt. I was sore. Yes, my muscles were sore, but that aching, painful knee was not there. And the next day, they were not swollen. I could do a recovery run, and I'd never been able to do that before. And I'm like, oh, now I see. This is what all the ultra runners this is what it's supposed to feel like. And it was amazing because the other runs had been so painful after finishing. You do question your life choices, but this run, it was a win, not only because I ran well, but because I was so much stronger and the knees were pain free. And I could walk up and down stairs the next day. The quads were a little sore, but it definitely my body definitely held up well, for that distance, and it was just like in my wildest dreams, I would have never thought that it was possible.
Yeah, I remember when we first spoke, I was like, we'll see how it goes, but that's kind of close. You'd have to do really well, but you did. And when you told me you would, I was like, bloody hell, I did not expect that either. So yeah, phenomenal, man. Well done. But you have to tell us a little more detail about the aid station, because I know you mentioned that you had a bit of a rough spot just before the end, but you said that you pulled into an aid station feeling very much like you couldn't keep going, I think you said, for the last one.
Yes, there was a water stop. I think it was at mile 32 or 33, and I had already fallen, and I was at one point I just when I was on the ground, I was like, "Oh, I don't think I can keep going." Cried a little bit, had a pity party for myself, and I thought, "Oh, just make it to that water stop." I can't think about the 38 miles. I just need to make it to that water stop. It's only a few miles away. I'll crawl if I have to. So I got into that aid station, that water stop, and the thought was, oh, I should just tell them to radio in and like I'm done. And they're like, well, you're the first girl that's come through here, so you might want to keep running. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for that. And so I drank some water. And I thought, yeah, I'm at mile 33. It's like, 5 miles to go. I stop now. And I could hike uphill and there was no leg pain. So I really checked in with my body. I did the little scale, like, where do you hurt? Well, I don't really hurt. I'm just tired. And how do the knees feel? They look good. Yeah, my quads, the downhills, my quads weren't too
Yeah.
happy, but it wasn't anything that I was scared of the pain, like I was going to ruin a joint or anything.
Mm.
And so I just said, you know what? I'm just going to keep moving. And that motivation, thinking about all the encouragement that I've had throughout the program, people, your whole team, you've got this, you're doing so good. And just knowing that I had that support was huge.
And
And trusting that you guys exactly what I needed to get where I want to go. And yeah, I mean the proof is there. I'm proof that your program got me to my beyond my wildest dreams, because I would have never thought that this a win was possible like that, a podium finish.
yeah, it's funny how you were just completely ready to pull out when you got to aid station, and then you're like, oh, you're the first girl, you know, and you're like, oh, I feel a bit better now. I think I might be able to keep going.
And you know that they always tell you, they're like, well, don't quote us on that, but we haven't really seen any other females come by here. So I was like, oh, okay. So then it was like, well, even if there's someone in front of me, you know, that's still a podium finish. And you know, if I come crawling in, maybe third, like I would have been totally shocked at that as well. So yeah, but it was amazing out there.
It's awesome. Congratulations. So what's next for you?
So I going to keep to my goal of, well, let you help me see the bigger goal to, you know, keep running um till I'm like 70, 80, you know, just have running as a part of my life because I do love it so much. And then that being said, the next goal is to start increasing mileage. So I've done 38 and felt strong. So the next step up would be a 50 miler. So probably this December, I'll be back out on the Arizona Trail doing a 50 miler. Again, I never sign up to say, "Hey, I'm going to win this race," but you know, I sign up and say I will finish.
Yeah.
I feel strong enough to finish, and but we'll see how that goes, and then after that 50's done, maybe do some back-to-back 50's, and then eventually get to that goal of 100 miles.
Yeah. How does it feel to be able to kind of say that and actually think realistically that's the next year ahead of me now?
It doesn't make me feel crazy because before, when I thought, you know, back to that knee pain and then saying, okay, this is what I feel like after 30 miles. What's it going to feel like after 50? Oh, you're crazy to think you could run 50 miles. But now I don't tell myself that because I know how I felt after 38. And I thought, yeah, another 12 miles would have been a little ouchy, but it didn't feel impossible or
Mm.
crazy to think that, you know, 50's definitely there, and I feel strong enough and pain free enough to make that happen.
Yeah, and you're going to build on the work you've done, right? Like it's only been what, like just over 3 months that you've been doing this. Like imagine after 3 years of training like this, like that'll be, you're going to keep getting stronger, and that's how you're going to get to that 100 miler eventually.
Yes, and that was something else that was just mind boggling, was the amount of progress that I felt I made in such a small amount of time, given the grand scheme of things. You
Mm.
know that it was so, I won't say it was easy to correct because there was a lot of work, but the method was easy to follow and the results were, you know, just phenomenal.
So that's great. It's been an absolute pleasure to be along for the ride. So thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. I'm sure it's inspiring to other aspiring ultra runners who are struggling with whether it's knee pain or anything really, because it's a lot of miles in ultra running. So it's not uncommon for people to be in pain. And I think your dedication and your discipline and your tenacity to find a solution and then pursue it is it's an inspiration. So well done. You fully deserve all your success, and I'm excited to help you prep for that 50 miler and then onwards and upwards after that.
Thank you so very much. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Jessica.